This is Bryson Dechambeau's Krank Driver. This driver technology has 26 World Long Drive Championships. But I'm curious, is this driver good for us regular golfers? Or should we just leave it with Bryson and the World Long Drive guys? Let's find out. Just because this is Bryson's driver and it's built for high swing speeds doesn't mean that Krank doesn't have a driver for you. Krank Golf does offer 3 different club heads depending on your club head speed, so there should be a Krank driver for you. And one of their driver heads is actually an illegal driver head. Well, it's not illegal, it's just non-conforming. And what that means is if you play men's night or any type of tournament, you cannot use that driver. It's built for those of you with really slow club head speeds, and Krank says that you should get an extra 20 to 30 yards with that driver head. So what do you think? Should I test that one too? Maybe for that video, I'll bring in another average golfer and someone with a super slow club head speed, and maybe my dad or another one of my buddies might be a pretty good candidate. I've been holding Bryson's driver long enough, I gotta hit it. Let's go. Okay, first hit with Bryson's driver. This Krank driver is called the Formula Fire Pro. Visually, it looks quite different from any other driver I've ever tested. On the back, it has kind of some raised bars. It reminds me a lot of like a Ping driver with their turbulators, but these are at the back. The front of the crown is actually quite smooth, and those raised ribs are near the back. It just looks different. I find the club head shape is a little different too. It's almost has like a square look to it, where a lot of drivers are much more rounded. So visually, it's gonna take some getting used to. This is a 7.5 degree loft, and it's probably one of the lowest lofted drivers I've ever hit. A lot of long drive guys play a really low loft. I think Bryson's loft is maybe like 6 degrees, so super low. I'm gonna be testing this driver up against a Taylormade. Let's pick Taylormade. I'll pick a Taylormade Qi10 LS so I can do some comparative data just to see how this matches up against a current driver. Might be pretty leaky. If you guys are new to the channel, it would mean a lot to me if you smash subscribe and hit that like button. The more subscribers I have is really just leverage that I can use for other golf companies like Krank. Krank sent me these drivers that I can review them for you. So the more likes, the more subscribers I have, the more opportunities that I have to make really good content for you guys. I really want to grow this channel, and it starts with you guys just hitting like and subscribe. So I'd really appreciate it if you help me grow the channel. Huh, interesting. So far, looking at a 7.5 degree loft is taking a little bit to get used to. It almost looks like the driver face is closed at impact. So I find that I'm kind of just playing with my hands to maybe open it a little bit just so I can see a little loft. And I notice I'm obviously not hitting it as high. I'm getting some really good rollout, but it's just not a flight characteristic that I'm used to. Krank says this driver specifically is meant for club head speeds over 105 miles an hour. I am nursing a bit of a hip injury. I'm not swinging any personal records by any means today. I think I'll be around that 114, which is what I just had. I had one get up to 117 club head speed, but I'm not gonna be hitting that like 120 club head speed. And Bryson, I don't even know what Bryson's at right now. Is he like over 130? Like that's just insane. So definitely not competing on World Long Drive, but that's why I wanted just to test this to see if it's good for like an everyday golfer to take this to the course. Wow. That did not really feel like a mishit. And that was kind of like it was pretty pulley. I've noticed the spin is staying really low, so a lot of long drive drivers have really low spin characteristics. These things are meant to go far. So in the long drive world, distance is the priority. Speed is the priority. Accuracy, not much. Typically in a long drive session, they have a set amount of time. They can hit as many balls as they want until they keep one in play. So for the average golfer, you still want some max forgiveness. And Krank is claiming that this has forgiveness, but we're gonna have to see how the forgiveness compares when I hit the Taylormade. It's a bit better. Feel-wise, it does feel very solid off the face. I would say it feels as good as any other driver that I've tested, from a Taylormade to Titleist, Ping, Callaway, Srixon. It feels as good as all of them. So from a feel standpoint, it's right there with everyone else. Krank said on their website that they have new micro milling on the club face. And when I read that, I was expecting the face to feel milled, and that's not necessarily the case. So I'm not sure if the micro milling are these graphics. The graphics almost look like 3D etched, but I don't see any milling, so I'm not really sure what they mean about the milling on the face, because it looks just like a normal, driver face. I don't see any milling. Where like a Cobra driver, I remember Cobra still have a milled face? I don't think so. I know that Cobra had a milled face. That was a couple generations ago where you could actually see the milling across the face, but they call this micro milling, so that's obviously different because I don't feel anything. The face is smooth. Like those feel like good swings. I'm surprised there's this much variance between the left and the rights where I feel like I'm putting pretty decent swings on it. Isn't that the classic? It's the equipment, not the golfer. That's 10 hits. Let me go through the data with you guys. I'll let you know too that the shaft that they sent me is a Fujikura Motor X F3 6X Flex. It's a shaft that I've never hit before. I use Fujikura Ventus in my current driver. I find the characteristics a little bit different, so when we take a look at my variants, just know that this shaft is something that I've never hit before. When I try the Taylormade, I'm gonna try to put a very similar shaft in. I don't have this exact same shaft, but I want the testing to be as close as possible. Let's go through the data here. So right away, looking at my tracers, not the best session with a driver I've ever had. I had a bunch go left and a bunch go right, and almost none of them were straight down the line. For me, it's still early in the golf season. I feel like the swing is getting there, but I feel like I had some pretty good swings on it. I'm just not really seeing those results. Again, that could be the shaft. Let's look at my averages. Average club head speed, 114. Typically, I'm like 118, so again, I'm nursing that injury, so I can't swing as fast as normal. Spin, super optimal. 2,400 spin, carry 294, 328 total. Smash factor was awesome with a 148, but what I do notice is that I'm hitting the ball really low. So a 7.5 degree head, I think for me personally is almost too low. I've always used like 9 degree, so I'm used to seeing kind of that high, softer ball flight, and I'm not really seeing that with this head. Let's look at my dispersion. I picked a new driving range for you guys, one that I haven't tested out yet before, and I didn't realize that the driving range only went to 300 yards. So it looks like we're hitting it on the road, but we can still see the dispersion of these guys. So I had really only 2, maybe 3 near the line, 3 go right, 3 go left, but look how consistent that yardage is. So I think if I could just dial down the shaft a little bit and just get a little closer to that line, this is an extremely consistent driver. I've had drivers where I'll have one 40 yards shorter than the other just based on mishits, and I definitely had mishits. So I'd say from a forgiveness standpoint, you're gonna get the distance, and then it's up to the shaft to kind of just help with the accuracy. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit the Taylormade Qi10 LS in an 8 degree, so very similar loft as the Krank, and then we can put these side by side to see if there's any difference between the two. So let's hit the Taylormade. This Qi10 LS is on the exact same settings as the Krank Driver. The only difference is this is a 0.5 degree higher. I didn't want to play around with the loft because that's just going to open the face. So that's why I'm just going to leave it at 8 degrees. Consistently left, that's for sure. Some days I'm just allergic to that center line. Can't hit anything straight. Okay, everywhere but the center of the line. Let's compare the Taylormade and the Krank. Okay, taking a look at the Taylormade data, I was equally inconsistent, to say the least. Got a little bit tighter with the Taylormade. I would say that the Taylormade shaft that I had is just a slightly better shaft. I had a 10C low launch shaft in it, something that I've hit a little bit more than the Krank Driver shaft. So I would say from a dispersion standpoint, it looks to be a little bit better. And actually comparing the data, I was swinging the Taylormade 1 mile an hour faster. I had faster ball speed with the Taylormade. My spin was lower with the Taylormade. I was carrying it further, had further total, so I actually had better results out of the Taylormade. Let's look at the dispersion really quick. So again, from a forgiveness perspective, super consistent distance-wise. So with the Krank versus the Taylormade, from a distance standpoint, like they're right neck and neck with each other, like really close. I would say the same from a dispersion standpoint, right? You can see that these lines are right on top of each other. Based on all the data that I had read on Krank, and especially seeing Bryson hit it, I was kind of expecting the Krank to be like 10 yards further than the other driver, 15 yards further. Maybe at my club hit speed at like 115 miles an hour, it's not making a huge difference. Maybe you gotta be like a world long drive guy swinging it at 130, 140, 150 miles an hour. Maybe that's where you see the big difference. I would say that it is a really good driver. So to see the overlay of my dispersion between the Krank and the Taylormade, they're right there. Like they're pretty neck and neck. I think the biggest difference is gonna be in someone in a slower club head speed. So I'm really excited to make another video testing out one of the other Krank Driver heads with someone that's a much lower club head speed than me, just to see if there's a big difference. So if you wanna see that video, you gotta make sure that you subscribe. Overall, I'm happy with the Krank Driver. You can see it kept up with the Taylormade. that was a really fun test. Thanks for watching. We'll check in with you guys next time.